We're just going to wait for a few more people to sign in. We're expecting a couple hundred people. Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, as we are just standing by, like I said, if there's any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. In the meantime, actually, why don't we do a quick mic check for the people who'll be speaking? Flynn, Jody, Cliff, can y'all just quickly say hi and make sure everything sounds good?
Hello.
Hey, everybody.
Hello.
Perfect. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, got me.
Yeah, we still got people trickling in. So we'll get started once we get up over 100 or so people there, I think. And start off with the video. And then this is also being recorded. So if you want to share this with anybody else or review it later, that link will be available. Perfect. Yeah, if anyone has just joined, and I'll go over it again, but we'll be doing our questions via the Q&A option within Zoom. Just keeps the flow moving along. But we do have a group of people that are standing by and able to answer questions as they arise. So we're at 98 people now, 10:03. So why don't we get going at 10:05? We'll wait 2 more minutes and go from there. $108. Yeah, and if you have just joined, if you want to try giving a thumbs up, seeing how the reactions work, or if you want to just enter a comment or a question into the Q&A, and we'll attend to it. Perfect. Thank you. Awesome. Thanks, everyone. So I'm going to start off just with a little video and let that run for a few more minutes, and then we'll get into the main presentation. So that's 10:05. I think we'll go ahead and get started here. So good morning, everyone. My name is Noah Pulowski, and welcome to Into the Canopy. So today we're going to show you what happens when autonomous sensing moves out of the lab and into real forestry operations, from the first flight to a decision that a forester can actually defend. So we've got a lot to show you, and let's get into it. It's kind of the journey. So we're going to start with the pressures that are facing forestry teams right now. Then we'll move quickly into proof, real scale, real blocks, and then a live operator perspective from Tolko. Then Jody is going to take us through the workflow and the data, and then we'll look at proof in the field. And then Flynn will show us how we're scaling across North America. And then we'll close with what's changed since April. As I mentioned before, uh, as questions occur, if something comes up and you'd like a little more info on it, please do just drop questions into the Q&A throughout. So joining me are three people who see this from very different angles. Cliff Robertson runs silviculture at Toko and brings the operator's view. Jody Klotz leads customer deployment in Canada. She knows what it takes to make this work in the field. And Flynn Miller leads the North American sales and business development and works with teams who are evaluating the move to autonomous workflows. I'll keep us moving and make sure that we get into the questions that matter. Before we do that, though, if the group could introduce themselves, Cliff, if you'd like to just briefly introduce yourself, and then Flynn and Jody.
Yeah, I'm Cliff Robertson. I'm the forestry superintendent for silviculture in the southern interior for Tolko. I've been working in forestry for just about 30 years now. I have a very vast array of experience, basically all aspects of forestry. So, yeah, that's about it.
Thanks, Cliff. Hey, everybody. My name is Flynn Miller. I am head of sales and business development for Farmevo. I live in Athens, Georgia, here in the South. I recently started Farmevo in June, so only a few months in at this point, but came from PRT and the seedling business. I was there for 13 years, expanding the business from Canada to the US. In these few short months, I've really enjoyed working with the group and learning all the technology, and very excited for you to learn more about what we do. We appreciate your time and thank you for being here.
Explain. Hi, I'm Jody. I've been working in silviculture and doing surveys in BC for over 20 years. I started with Farmevo last spring and have helped with field testing and data acquisition, and more recently, demonstrating the software.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. So again, my name is Nopolowski. I lead commercialization and sales. I've been working primarily in British Columbia and Canada, moving into Eastern Canada a bit, and now into the Pacific Northwest United States. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to going through the conversation with you and showing you what it is we have been up to. Let me see if we can get that slide back up. Everyone see that? You want to give me a thumbs up and we'll keep pressing on. Perfect. Thank you. So again, just to reiterate, I want to make sure everyone's comfortable. Use the Q&A anytime. Don't save good questions for the end. We do have a team of people that will answer chats throughout the session in the background. And every once in a while, I have a selected question or two that I can bring into the conversation when it makes sense and it helps with the overall story. So Farmevo, we build autonomous remote sensing systems for the real world. In agriculture, that's our Lens AI product, but today we are focused on SylvaSense. It's an autonomous collection, AI analysis, and audit-ready forestry platform. And it's connecting all of those things into a single pipeline. What makes this different from a collection of tools is continuity. So that same operating thread runs from mission planning to the evidence that the forest will actually review. So we're not asking teams to become drone specialists or data engineers or machine learning experts. We're packaging that complexity into a very simple workflow that anybody can access. The technology can be very sophisticated behind the scenes, but the experience in the field has to remain very clear. So let's start with the constraints that we're hearing from people who are in the industry. Forestry teams are not short on work. They're short on people, on time, and accessible field days. More land has to be covered inside tighter seasonal workflows, often across difficult terrain. And adding a drone doesn't automatically solve that. If that flow still needs specialists or manual processing and several disconnected tools, you've only shifted that bottleneck. SylvaSense is designed to remove it entirely. So one of the questions I could kind of put out to the group is, where does your current forestry workflow spend most of the time? And we actually have a poll for that as well. You can try and launch that. This is around, where would this be useful if you could save time within your current workflow? A lot of people are seeing that it is on the focus side. Where's the best and most efficient way to direct our people once they're actually out and operating? So this is not just a concept slide. These are operating metrics. We have field validated species accuracy above 90%, about 300 acres surveyed per operator day in the field, roughly 300 AI plots assessed daily. More than 100,000 trees have been analyzed, and we're seeing 3-4 times the plot density with any block being surveyed. So the point isn't any one of those specific numbers. It's that collection, processing and learning all happening continuously in the field. So let's zoom out a little bit. What does that look like at operating scale? So more than 30,000 hectares have been surveyed across operational forestry programs, and that's production work. That's not demonstration acreage. More than 1,500 autonomous missions across multiple regions, and then each one is following the same repeatable workflow: plan, capture, process, deliver. More than 35,000 plots since April, not simply images, but georeference observations that are producing species level intelligence every day. Scale matters here because forestry decisions are rarely made from just one plot. Confidence comes from seeing a consistent pattern across a block, having enough evidence to understand the variation. More plots don't create a bigger data set, they create a more complete picture of what's actually happening on the ground and where the expectations are. So I could spend the next 10 minutes telling you that this works, but I think it's better to hear it from someone who's actually using it. Cliff Robertson is the forestry superintendent for silviculture at Tolko. Cliff, thank you very much for joining us. Let's start with what the job looked like before SylvaSense.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
What was a typical? Oh, sorry, Cliff. Go ahead.
Yeah, typically we had people on the ground, and our average production was about 30 hectares per day, give or take, depending on what types of surveys they were doing, but that was kind of the average. Yeah, we got it converted to acres per day here, so that's good.
Yeah. Yeah, we got the American folks over on this one. So in a typical block, are these numbers fairly accurate? How much ground was the team covering pre-drone and then post?
Yeah, so we were about 30 hectares per day, and now we're up to 120 hectares per day per person with the drone.
Okay, great. So what changed when the drone workflow came in? What was sort of like the main difference in the field?
The biggest difference is less about the production and more about what we can cover with more production. So we're getting better data, more complete data, with crews not having to guess where to walk. We cover the whole block easily and have pictures of it and plots. And I think one of the biggest things that's improved is we're not missing areas anymore. We're getting the full coverage of each block, and we know what's going on.
Yeah, fantastic. So when you mentioned previously improvements in speed in the field in one of our conversations, that was a result not just of the drones themselves being faster, but not necessarily needing to move to blocks that are not as contiguous. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, it just, we're getting more and more to a place where we're controlling access early on in our process. So, you can fly, you don't have to go to the far end of the block walk it, right? There's no dead time, no dead walking anymore. You just drive to a spot and fly the block.
Perfect. So the value there is not necessarily you're just covering more ground with the flights. It's that you're actually able to get out there without having to move from spot to spot.
Yeah, it really overcomes the access issue, right? If there's a bridge out, stop at the bridge.
Yeah, perfect. And you're able to get that ahead of time. So one of the things we spoke about was um, your operating costs. So I think we actually have a slide for that I can pull up afterwards. You were thinking it was around 30% lower in 1 year. Was that right?
Yeah, that's correct. We went from about, do you have the numbers in front of you there, Noah, that I had?
Yeah, you
Um,
bet.
we were about 25 bucks a hectare, I think was kind of the number. And now for what we've done, we're going to be in the high teens per hectare.
That's great. And where were you realizing those savings?
Yeah, it's production and travel, right? It's and you know what? People aren't getting tired out. You can work all day, like you don't get tired. You just go and you're the drone does all the hard work, and you can spend more time using your brain instead of your body.
Yeah. So what are you finding? How long is it taking per plot with the drones?
Yeah, the drones will be between a minute and a minute and a half per plot, depending on which type of plot you're doing. Um, yeah, the real time sink is actually travel now.
Hmm.
I mean, we can do as many plots as we want, right? Like to do an extra 10 plots is only an extra 10 to 15 minutes.
Oh, wow. Yeah, actually, it's interesting that you mentioned just a moment ago the reduction in just actual physical fatigue from not having to be out there smashing around in the hot sun.
Yeah, certainly. It's really big, right? On a nice day, it's great. But here in the southern interior, it gets pretty hot.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I was curious, actually, your views on just the regulations around drones and how you see that sort of changing in the future, where it is kind of now.
Yeah, I mean, like right now, you need your pilot's license to fly the larger drone, which is really the most efficient way to do it. Which is not it's not that hard to get your drone pilot's license. The bigger one will be we don't have anybody with beyond visual line of sight certification right now. Um, for us in our scenario, I don't know how much better that would make things. Probably a little bit, but that's a fairly significant hurdle to overcome. I believe it's like a 5 day course, and you got to go to flight training school, all that kind of stuff. So we haven't crossed that bridge yet, but we will at some point, I think. And hopefully, as this stuff moves forward, we can maybe risk manage some of these things based on, the areas where we're operating, which are fairly remote, very low probability of anything catastrophic happening if something does go wrong with our drones. So hopefully the
Sure.
government will be able to overcome that.
Yeah, fantastic. Actually, that makes me think as well about the drones that you're using. I know that we sort of started off using minis, but that's changed over time, right?
Yeah, we do have a couple minis, and they are useful. They're slower. Um, they need to take more pictures because the camera's different. So to do a free to grow plot for us is about 4 minutes with the mini, and it's 1 minute with the larger drone, the Matrice that we use. So definitely we've moved off the minis now. Like they'll come out of production once they've finished their usable life, and we would just continue with the larger drones.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Have you had much interaction with any of the other companies sort of operating in similar areas to you, and then they've seen what you guys are doing?
A little bit. Like I'm working with the government right now to build kind of some processes for reportable survey submissions, and the other licensees have been involved or around for those conversations, anyways.
Yeah, perfect. Awesome. Well, yeah, thank you very much, Cliff. I mean, it sounds like better data, faster decisions, lower costs. I mean, those are all kind of what we really want to be able to deliver. And I'm super happy that you're actually able to be realizing that. It's fantastic. I have a poll here for the group, which is how are you handling field capture today? I know there are some folks out there using drones, contractors, internal crews, what the mix is, but always curious to see how this is actually being done. I'll let that poll sit up for a minute or two, and then I'll push the results out to the group. Um, is there anything else, Cliff, before I move on, that you would want to share with people who are maybe thinking about moving into drones? Um, anything that might, sway them one way or another?
Yeah, I mean, I think the initial savings is just, you get more data for less cost, but I'm already starting to see it in, how we're planning for next year and really being able to refine our treatments for site prep and fill planting based on the better data from the drones. I recognize that as an issue, last year that we were treating areas that probably didn't need to be treated with site prep, and we were fill planting areas that didn't need to be fill planted. So that's actually probably going to be a bigger savings than what I'm realizing just from the surveying side.
Interesting. Great. Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Cliff. Much appreciated. Thank you for your time. So from here, I'd love to get Jody to talk a little bit about what her experience has been in terms of seeing this deployed in the field and how she's using it with the folks that we've been speaking with.
All right. So the product experience is deliberately simple. Capture the block data, process the imagery, and deliver the results. The complexity itself is in the platform, not on the block with the crew. Operators work with supported drone hardware, and the AI handles the plot analysis. And the data is ready to review, export, and share within 24 hours. SylvaSense is designed to bring your entire forestry workflow into a single connected experience. Instead of using multiple tools for planning, surveying, processing, or reporting, everything happens on the one platform. So after logging in, easily drag and drop your shapefiles, KMLs, KMZs on the platform. Export your survey and block information in your preferred template, whether that's LRM, Snap, or customized, and organize your operational areas into regions. Edit your plot locations, refresh the app on your remote control, and you're ready to perform your surveys, this time from the road. Once the data is collected, the platform automatically processes the imagery using AI. Instead of spending hours physically plotting, reviewing data, companies receive detailed analysis of every plot, including the information they need to guide forest practices and long-term planning. The final step is turning that analysis into something useful. SylvaSense generates customizable, audit-ready reports that can be shared and easily adapt to stay compliant with different provincial standards by site objectives. I mean, everybody does forestry differently, and this platform is really adjustable to your needs.
Yeah, fantastic. I know the video is a little bit fast there, but I think it gives a pretty good overview, of the process. But we don't want to be watching a video for 15 minutes, so it's a bit sped up. But yeah, thank you, Jody.
Yes.
So this is still on talking with your experience. When you're doing the surveys, how does it sort of work? Like, what does that look like?
Well, you have a few options. There's these two complementary missions. First, the high-level recce flight that gives you the big picture. And then the lower level plot level gets close enough to see individual trees and needles. One tells us where to look, and the other tells us exactly what's there.
Yeah, awesome.
So a single recce flight offers a comprehensive overall view of the blocks, mapping your in-block access, drainages, elevation, aspect, tree heights, and a high-resolution site map for your pre-stratification needs. We move from the overall block level to the plot level. Species classification already identifies pine, spruce, hemlock, fir, cedar, and more than 10 vegetation groups. And we can look at some of the plot outputs here. Stems per hectare, total conifer count. The system identifies individual conifer species and converts that into stems per hectare. And with species composition percentages. Tree heights are measured with a 4-image survey or a 25-image survey, depending on your hardware. Each tree shows detected heights and other plot level data. And crown closure, which is really exciting for all of us, possibly for the first time, having an accurate and consistent measure of crown closure showing the canopy in each plot. And well spaced are counted on your entered minimum inter-tree distance and automatically calculated. Shows you stalking at a visible glance. And then evidence, the needle level imagery are attached to the results, so anybody can easily audit and verify the system's findings.
That's great. And so when the species identification, how is that sort of working on the back end?
Well, it's just a lot of data acquisition, get the imagery, train the AI model, and it's just the model expands with geography. It's not one generic tree model. As we enter new regions, we add new species and validate the species that matter there, from the temperate coastal Douglas fir and cedar stands to the boreal jack pine and spruce forests.
Yeah, awesome.
Mhm.
Well, yeah, thank you very much, Jody. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Going to kind of move into the next part of it. So kind of just pulling back, what we wanted to avoid with SylvaSense is one flight going out and just generating a folder full of imagery. That's not going to be enough, right? We're trying to create forest intelligence, and the distinction there matters. So forestry teams already have imagery. They've got maps, isolated data sets. The hard part, the real problem, is connecting those into a network that allows you to generate a decision that can then be explained, can be reviewed, and then, of course, repeated. So our job has been to try and shorten that path without the operator becoming a data scientist or some sort of expert drone pilot. And again, we're trying to avoid adding another disconnected system into an already often very complicated workflow. So we have essentially 6 really usable outputs, like Jody was mentioning: species classification, stocking metrics, tree measurements, plot analytics, and then that audit-ready reporting. And that changes, tracking the changes that happen within a block over time. So the flight is the input, and then our decision is actually the product. Just a question to the crowd, kind of in general. I don't have a poll for it, but just out of curiosity, imagery, and like if you could put this into the Q&A if it comes up, where would imagery stop being useful when you're trying to use it to make kind of an interpretation in your current workflow? I mean, are you able to look at pictures and do things like species classification? Are you able to do tree planting, or sorry, tree counting, getting those numbers, or would you need something like what we're offering here and able to actually automate that and get and extract information from those images? Again, like what we're trying to do is add value by connecting these outputs. A species result on its own is interesting. A species result tied to stocking, height, location, and evidence, and then also history. Now you've got something that's actually operational and it can support a treatment decision, like Cliff was talking about, a conversation that you might have with a contractor if you're doing an audit, or just you're looking at a comparison over time. So again, that's the difference between just collecting more data and actually working to make a better decision. Every layer you've got should make the next action clearer, not just give another dashboard for people to try and interpret. I actually do have a poll on this one. So when you're thinking about something like this, what metrics would need to be included for this to be useful for your team? If everyone can see that, hopefully it's up there. Yeah, stems, well-spaced, free-growing height, species group. I'll let that sit up there for a minute and then share those results. It's fairly even split, actually. Well-spaced, it's dropping down. It's kind of like watching a race. Perfect. So I'm going to play a little video. I'll leave that poll up for another minute. The canopy is really only half of the forest, right? And we would love to be able to explore below the canopy and into the canopy. And our R&D team is right now working on getting quadruped robots that are going to be able to extend our sensing ability beneath dense cover where aerial systems just can't go. This is a prototype at the moment, but it is something that we are working hard on and that we will be rolling out. So I'm gonna play this. So this is our quadruped robot. This is fully autonomous. You can see it's got the little brain on the top there. This guy here is Rana. He's one of the founders, very, very bright guy, and working hard on making this a reality. I know when I show this to people, one of the comments that often comes up is it's a little bit eerie, sort of creepy, but also has a lot of promise, and I think it really revolutionize some of the stuff you're able to do with timber cruising. So kind of moving along and talking about scaling, enterprise scale isn't just about more hectares or more acres, it's repeatability. It's having supported drone platforms, having the same setup across different crews, being able to run concurrent missions, having more drones in the air simultaneously, faster processing, and then outputs that fit whatever workflow that you're already using. So that's how a useful field tool can ideally become sort of an operating standard. For an enterprise team, consistency is what really protects the return. If every crew has a different method and every region is using a different file system or a different reporting standard, everything needs to be customized and the interpretations become a real time blocker. That type of scale just adds complexity instead of removing it. And our goal is, again, the opposite. Local species and conditions should be reflected in the intelligence, while the operating experience remains very, very standardized and repeatable. That's one of the beautiful parts about our dashboard and our pipeline. It's very, very easy to use, and all of your crews, all of your teams will have essentially the same experience. I have another, we'll skip that one, but moving into what we're doing here in our different regions. I'll get Flynn to chat about this. Flynn, if you want to talk about the areas that we're working in and what our deployments look like as we roll out across North America.
Absolutely. Thanks, Noah. Yeah, so as some of you might know, we started in British Columbia, and we have begun to move across Canada through to Alberta and Ontario. And those are the locations that we are live here. Yep, you can see the next three. And then on the next slide, I'll get to in just a minute on our new deploy lead that has started as of Monday of this week. And so we have hired that. And Jody will be making her way to Oregon next week to start deployment in the Pacific Northwest. And then the following week, we will be in Montana. And so deployment will officially be underway in Pacific Northwest. And we will be hiring, or actually have hired and starting in the Southeast 1st of September. So we have the same deployment position that will begin with us 1st of September. We'll do training and onboarding through September, and then we look to the decision pilots helping customers starting late September, early October. And so with this expansion also means building the team close to the customer. This is Angel Robinson, who I mentioned just joined on Monday, but she is to lead customer deployment and success across the Pacific Northwest. Angel is joining us from Green Diamond, where she was a GIS forester, and she brings her field experience and local presence that turns a rollout into a repeatable operating program. So we welcome Angel, and I will actually be heading out to Montana myself to be with Jody and Angel in a few weeks, and look forward to working with them on that project. So this is our forestry immersion that took place when we launched in Ontario. It's actually my first few days on the job back in June. And this is how we typically like to enter a region, not in a boardroom launch, but with out in the field, showing you exactly how this takes place. In Thunder Bay, the teams planned missions together, flew live stands, reviewed the output, and gave us direct feedback. And that feedback is very important. And you'll go to the next slide and we'll show you a brief video on that.
I see a lot of potential in the product, not just in what we're, where you're presently at.
I think it is representing, I think, the future.
Like, I wasn't expecting it to be so automated.
Yeah. Great. Great. Thank you very much, Flynn. So this is just how far we've come since April. And there's essentially 5 big changes. So the model supports more regional species. The digital plots can be audited inside the app. We've got an iOS application now. So the Forest Diary brings that capture to iOS, which is great. The platform is faster. And offline navigation now works where you might not have a network. So that's 5 updates. But again, it's following the same pattern, just less friction between the field and between the decision. Those updates matter because they came from use, so not from a development team just generating things in a vacuum. Each one of those has removed a point of friction that we've seen in deployment. And actually, that's something that I might ask you about in a second here, Cliff. Just when you've been involved with this onboarding process and getting things covered for you and for your operation, what's that experience been like?
Oh, the onboarding was pretty easy. The field data collection is very simple and very easy. It doesn't take long to learn. Like, we did a day, and then there's a bit of a ramp up there with a few mistakes and some questions. Yeah, that was super easy. The Farmevo people have been really really good at customizing stuff for us and making changes where we've wanted some changes. We're working our way through to a pretty premium product.
And so, did you find that this kind of corresponds with what I was saying, like the having a bit of a friction point and then having the team being able to address that and fix that friction point and allow operations to move on smoothly?
Yeah, the every problem we've encountered has been corrected, within a week or upgraded or whatever we need to do.
Perfect. Yeah, that's great. Was there anything in particular that kind of stands out in your memory of that process where it was like a fast turnaround or like an especially big improvement?
Yeah, I mean, we just had one actually this week, on the data processing end, we were having some issues with how to build new stratums within the portal. And, we first encountered the issue on Wednesday, and today we had a meeting and they've basically addressed it and they just have to roll it out to us now. It should be available next week.
Yeah, fantastic. So the other question I had was what the difference was in the initial sort of idea of how you'd be using this compared to how it's evolved over time within your group.
Yeah, I mean, one of the first things I said to my team was, I have an idea in my head of what this is going to look like, and the only thing I really know is it's not going to look like that. So, we've basically gone to a place where we just do a lot of plots for the most part. We can identify high risk stands, and the best way to get the detail is more plots. That gives you better statistics. It gives you better coverage, and because the plots are so fast to put in, you can just do a lot of plots and get a really good idea of where your trees are and kind of what their health is looking like. It's nice to have the pictures, right? You can really tell, if your trees are struggling or if they're healthy.
Sure. Yeah, that's great. There was a question that was in the chat there. I'll just pop this slide up because maybe we went over it a little too quickly. It was around the species that we're able to identify. So if everyone can see that slide, and this is a constantly evolving list. So as we move into new areas, kind of as Jody was mentioning, we will decide which trees are commercially important to the people that we're dealing with, and then we'll onboard those, and species identification happens pretty quickly. Believe that within a week, 2 weeks, we're going to be able to train a model up for a new commercially important species. So hopefully that answers that question, if that was outstanding for anybody. Cliff, were there any species that we were working on getting trained up for you that weren't initially in the model?
Yeah, certainly. Balsam was and still is a bit of a challenge. It does look an awful lot like Douglas fir. Excuse me. Um, deciduous is the next frontier for us. We're working on identifying those and training the model on deciduous. Obviously, deciduous and larch are problematic in the wintertime, even early spring and late fall, where, they got no needles, so they're pretty hard to identify.
Sure. I've got a quick question for the group. This is just a real simple one, and we kind of covered a little bit, but who's already using drones? And just kind of curious to see how that was. Cliff, before you started working with us, you owned a couple of drones. What were you using them for mainly?
Mostly what they were doing was just getting an overview photo of blocks, right? You could kind of fly around, and it was saving time, certainly. Instead of walking all over the place, you could kind of fly the and look and identify, problem areas or non-problem areas. And, having a couple of nice overview photos was certainly helpful.
Sure. So the thing that I think about there is, comparing that initial sort of drone use to what you're doing now. the difference there being, enterprise scale and just how that kind of shifted the way that drones are actually being used within your organization. What were some of the things that made it easier? Is it along the lines of being able to integrate all those different data sets in one spot, or is it something different?
I think the big thing is previous it was a manual process, right? And we weren't organized really. People were just taking photos with the drones, right? Some people were using them a lot. Some people were not using them at all. So we weren't really leveraging the drones because we didn't really have a good system to do stuff. Now that everything's kind of autonomous, you don't have to kind of wing it and fly your drone around and hope for the best. You have a flight plan and the drones are being used. And essentially, I've shifted every survey we do now to a drone survey. So everybody knows that they're using it and everyone's doing the same thing, and we're getting consistent data, collected in the same way at the same intensity for, different kinds of sites.
That there was one word that you used there that I think is super important, which is like workflow. So being able to get a system like ours to be effective for you means that we need to adapt to your workflows. What was that process like?
It's still ongoing. It's been really good. We've changed a few of the processes, and a lot of it was actually just us figuring out the best way to approach things. Every area is going to be a little bit different. Different blocks need a different survey, right? Depending on the age of the plantation and the treatment that we've applied. So, we've basically built workflows based on the characteristics of each block. How many plots per hectare do we do? Do we do the recce flight or not? Those sorts of things. Is this a reportable survey or not? So,
Yeah,
yeah, it's been good.
fantastic. Jody, I want to ask you another question as well. I mean, I know that you've been in the industry for a very long time. How do you see this sort of software, this sort of technology changing the shape of the workplace for people that are boots on the ground?
Well, I think it's already changing. I mean, a lot of the people I've met in this job have way more drone experience than I do. Like everybody's already implementing drones into their work in various ways. And so I think this will really streamline that process. Like people are interested in new ways of collecting forestry data. And to me, it's a logical and natural next step for where we are.
Hmm. What about the actual work itself? I mean, I know Cliff mentioned a little bit, it's physically less demanding. Do you think that's going to change the shape of the job at all?
Oh, yeah, completely. Completely, for sure. I mean, it already has for me. I injured my knee a few years ago and thought I was out of the game. But this puts me back in, and yeah, I don't know. A lot of us use our bodies too much in this job and have issues from that. And this is a good way to prevent that.
Yeah. Flynn, same sort of idea. I know you've been involved for a long, long time. And as you've been around and seeing this technology emerge, where do you think people are going to get the most value out of it? Where is the big win for most organizations?
I mean, I have to look at it from an economic standpoint and being able to cover more ground. When I actually had to chuckle when Cliff was talking about the heat up in British Columbia. I need to get you and Noah down to South Georgia in August right now. Um, but just, that's a great example. I mean, it's not rare that it's going to be pushing 105, 110 with the heat index, 100% humidity down here. So, trying to work outside, if you do work, you're starting, at daylight and you're done by noon. So, this enables you to work all day, and sit in your air conditioned truck while it's doing all the work. And then also, like I said, from an economic standpoint, the days of, traveling multiple people going to take plots, and all the distance that you're having to cover for that, just makes a lot of sense there. So.
Yeah, awesome. Actually, that I have a poll question that kind of ties in with that. This is just putting out sort of the group and just conceptually, if a system like this was working well for you, I mean, what does working well mean, right? Where would you derive the most value from? Would it be field coverage? Is it better reporting speed? I'll launch that poll. Just kind of curious the way that people are kind of thinking about that. You know, if this system was in place, where would I expect to see the most value? And then Cliff, I'd love to have your insight on that, right? Like out of those, you know, options I put up there, where are you getting the most? Is it on that field coverage side of it, and that's where you're getting that ROI? I think that's kind of what you mentioned before, right?
Yeah, I mean it's better data, right? That's really the win, is just better data. And I mean it works both ways. Um, I've got some blocks where I had a previous survey that said this block should make free to grow in 3 years with no issues. And you go survey the block with the drone, and that's not the case. So we're behind the eight ball all of a sudden because we didn't get the right data up front. And you go back and look at the survey, and it's a 15-hectare block, and they put 4 plots in, and kind of walked around a little bit, and they didn't get the data correct. Now we're not going to have that. Like, all those blocks get surveyed, at a very high intensity, so there's no surprises in the future.
Yeah, yeah, fantastic. Um, just kind of a question on the way that you're using the system. And so the results are coming in, and one of the things that we've tried to avoid is creating this mysterious system that just gives you numbers and gives you reports, right? Obviously, you need to be able to tie those back to the field and to the truth on the ground. The fact that the images themselves are georeferenced and that you can audit it, does that give you comfort in what you're able to report and what you're actually seeing in terms of metrics and on the deliverable side?
Well, like, that's the big win, right? Is we get good coverage, and we can look. When you have 3 to 4 plots per hectare, you're confident that if the plots have no trees in them, there's no trees there, right?
Yeah,
And then the
sure.
same thing if you've got a bunch of plots that have lots of trees in them. Each hectare pretty well, right? You can make pretty confident decisions about your management based on those plots.
Yeah, fantastic. There's another question that comes to mind. I know I feel like I'm picking on you a lot here, Cliff, but when when you think about how you would speak with other people who are apprehensive about drone programs, like what do you think they might be apprehensive about? What kind of apprehensions did you have? And, what would you say to them to sort of like, that's something that can be dealt with, or it's not necessarily as scary as you might imagine?
Yeah, you know what? Like, I was pretty confident right from the start that for our non-reportable surveys, this would work well, and it does. The big apprehension, and it's still a bit of a an ongoing problem that we're looking at for solutions for, is the reportable surveys. There's lots of stuff we're doing, and we'll get there. We may need to do some field auditing of some stuff that's higher risk. So really the next step is, how do you risk rate your blocks and get them to a place where we know, yeah, these blocks are going to be acceptable with just a drone survey, and the ones that we're going to need to go back to and try to get ahead of that curve so that we're making less trips to the field. That's the next frontier, is the submissions piece to the government for us. That's a
Yeah.
BC issue, right? Not really as much for the states. I don't believe. We're just expanding. Just the last couple of days, we got approval to do some of the same work in Alberta, which runs on a completely different system. So we're going to be testing that, I think, hopefully in the fall, and we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, it's great. Flynn, I'm curious about your opinion on it as well. When you've spoken with folks, maybe even before you were here, drone stuff, AI tech has been in the wind for a while. Where do you see people being apprehensive about it? And now that you've joined us, has that given you sort of more insight in how you might address those types of apprehensions?
I think the biggest apprehension is just because it's always been kind of the old school way of thinking, and
Right.
I don't see, I mean, as long as you can have better results for less cost, then I think the answer will be pretty easy. And I've actually compared it to when we back when we were in the seedling business, the Southeast was the last to kind of go from bare root to containerized, and it was kind of the same. It took a while, but I just see now with all the technology and everything that I can see the whole market kind of moving that direction.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. So we're kind of wrapping up towards the end there. I know people probably have commitments on the hour. Um, just kind of like to finish by saying, like, if this is something that you're interested in, if you'd like to learn more, you can contact me directly. My email's up there. If you scan that QR code and share some feedback, that would be very much appreciated. We're always trying to improve with everything that we do, whether that's on our software or just the way that we deliver this types of information. Um, if you'd like to see us actually out in the field, would love to do a forestry immersion, get a group of people together, go out and actually do that. So please do feel free to email me directly. Um, a question that I can kind of leave to you, and I'm not looking for a specific answer, but if we were to come out and we were to fly to do a decision pilot or sort of a trial, where would you want to see that done? What kind of block would you like to see, and what sort of value do you think you'd need to have before you wanted to take the next step forward? I know that in the polls there we saw that it's field coverage. How would that look in a trial? What would that look like in a demonstration? And again, if you have any questions as we're wrapping up here, just fire them in to the Q&A. As well, we will be sending out this recording, so feel free to share that with anybody else. And if there are additional questions, yeah, please let me know. But the next steps with us, it's a very small sort of thing. If you did want to learn more, it's not a huge commitment. We can go out, do a single block, give you an idea of what that success would look like for you, and then just be able to validate on a practical basis what would need to happen next for you to move on and move forward. So if there's any other questions, yeah, please fire them into the Q&A. Feel free to send me an email and scan and share that feedback. It would be greatly appreciated. Flynn, Jody, Cliff, if you have anything else you'd like to mention, but I think we'll try and wrap it up here and let people get on with the rest of their day. Thank you very much, everyone, for participating, for attending, for your time and attention. Again, greatly appreciated. Yeah, thanks, everyone. Appreciate it. Cliff, really appreciate you taking the time. Thanks so much.
Yeah, you betcha.
Yeah, likewise, Jody, Flynn. Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Noah.
Okay, talk to you
Cheers.
later.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you.